Welcome to another educational recording video from CSCI 1300. My name is Ioana Fleming, and today we're going to be talking about the switch statement. The switch statement is basically another option you have when your program has to branch out based on the value of a variable, the value of a single variable. So, let's say, for example, you have a variable that could take multiple fixed value, not a range of value, but multiple fixed values. And the switch statement basically lets you choose from this fixed set of alternatives. Let's look at an example. The syntax is a little bit different. This could all be implemented with multiple if-else statements, but it appears a little bit easier to read, debug, and implement with a switch statement. You can always do it with if-else statements, but you might get bogged down in curly braces and separating things, debugging things, making sure things are running the way you intend. So let's assume there was some variable digit of type integer. If we want to write a switch statement that basically makes decisions based on the value of variable digit, we will write switch, put the name of the variable in the parentheses, and then open a block of statements. Here we have case 1, case 2, case 3. This basically means if the value of variable digit is 1, do the following. Change the value of digit name to 1 as a string, and so on, right? So then we have options, fixed alternatives, from when the value of this variable is either 1, 2, 3, all the way to 9. And then we have the default option. The default option, it's basically the otherwise, right? If digit is not 1 and not 2 and not 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, if it's 10, if it's 0, if it's minus 25, if it's 100, then this default option will get executed. You have here underneath how would you have written this program with an if and else if statement. Let's move to VS Code and try to take a look at another example there. I wrote a couple of things for you, things that I was thinking you might want to remember. So the switch statement, we want to use it when we have multiple alternatives for the value of a variable. They are fixed alternatives. They are not going to be ranges, and it's most often going to work with integers and characters. Well, you might ask me why? Why just integers and characters? So I wrote it down here. You cannot use it when your variable is of type double, because basically all these case situations are checking if the value of your variable is identical to this value. And we know that with double variables, doing equality is not precise. There could be very, very, very tiny changes in the last digit of the floating point value, right? So we will not work with doubles. Also cannot have variables be in a range. They have to have these fixed values. Most often, and where I often use it, is when I want to implement something interactive and I want to give the user the choice of some menu options. For example, you would, write this as like multiple cout statements nicely formatted. Please choose your difficulty option. 1 for easy, 2 for medium, 3 for difficult. The user will enter one of 1, 2, and 3, hopefully. And then based on that, you'll have a switch statement where each case will lead to a certain option, where it could be a function that calls the game or whatever in the easy option. Let's look at another example. Let's say we would be trying to represent time in like a digital clock. So we will create two variables, hour and minute. We'll ask the user to enter values for those, assuming that the user enters clock time, something like 16:57 or 22:11 or something like that. But then we want to go back and post it in an AM, PM format, right? So here it is, an example of the switch statement where the variable I'm trying to switch is hour. So I'm going to check the value of hour, and based on its value, I'm going to choose to print a certain thing. So whether AM or PM, and the format hour, column, minute. So I filled this in, and let me show you what I did. So from 1 to 11, I basically printed it as is. For 12, I printed it as is, but with PM instead of AM. From 13 to 23, I subtracted 12 from the hour, right? So 12 is basically 1 p.m. 13 is basically 1 p.m. 14 is 2 p.m. and so on. So I have PMs here and minus 12. And for 24, I'm going to basically want to print 12, then the minute value, and then AM. And I have the default option in case the user enters a different value for hour that is above 24 or below 1. It's basically going to say wrong input. Let's look nicely at the syntax. Switch, the value, the name of the variable in parentheses, case, and then the values that I'm switching over here. Case, notice, switch, there are reserved words. Let's try to save it. And run it. Compile it. Let me move this a little bit to do an example. Okay, so let's say we enter 1657. Oh boy, something went wrong. We have 457 printed, that is correct, but we have it printed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times, and it prints wrong input. It's as if, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times, 8 times, 8 times, plus 9 times, plus wrong input. So there is something we forgot, and I forgot it on purpose because I want you guys to always remember. At the end of every statement in a switch case, you have to add break. If you don't add break, so we didn't have a break here. Because we didn't have a break here, what's happening, we call it falls through, which means 16, the situation for 16 will get executed, but also everything afterwards. That is 17, 18, 19, 20, all the way to the end. So we must add this break everywhere. And then we're going to write it again. A lot of copying and pasting. It's not a problem. Now we know, and we will not forget. And then I'll show you something else that we can do to basically eliminate having so many situations. Okay, we'll save it. And then we'll try this again. Compile. Run. 1657. Okay, now it clearly printed just one option. Now you might have noticed that a lot of these are similar. We're basically doing the same thing from 1 to 11. So we could be taking advantage of the fact that the cases fall through. So for case 1, we could execute what's at case 2. Actually, for cases 1 through 11, we could execute what's at 11. So let's try that. I'm going to leave this empty, which basically says all these cases will do whatever is the first thing when I stop deleting things, right? Bear with me a little bit. Let's see what happens. Okay, let's save it, compile it, and let's run it with a value where the hour is 11 or less. So let's say 8:45. 8:45 a.m. So it worked. Any one of these I would have entered for hours. This is the statement that would have gotten executed. It saves a little bit of time. If we look here in the textbook, we can see that they did cover that option. You basically don't have to have them all underneath. You can kind of have them like this and have the statement to be executed. We could do the same thing for 13 all the way to 23, but 11, 12, 24 should stay as the 3 options that are different of what we need to do. I hope you enjoy our presentation about the switch statement.